Hi, welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I am Nerder Doug, and tonight I am hanging out with this
Nerdarchus,
nerd.
yeah, Nerdarchus Dave. What's happening, man? You're messing me up. I'm not used to that. I'm used to being the one that open things.
I know, I say all the time, I got thousands of videos to catch up with you guys. I gotta get
So
the
weird.
timing down,
Yeah.
practice, a cadence. I'm your Padawan. Yeah, I pointed the right way. All right, I was looking at the preview.
Yeah, it's the opposite. You have to point the opposite. So
Yeah, I messed it up last week.
it's Bizarro World. That's
Yeah.
okay.
So usually Ted asks me how I am doing this fine day, and I must say this is a particularly awesome Monday. Usually the week does get off to a great start for me and Nerdarchy. But yeah, we got to announce Tasha's Cauldron of Everything today, and a bunch of details from the press briefing, which got a lot of coverage, and we were super excited about. So that's been fun tracking that all day. And yeah, one of my favorite guests, who is like right up there with Dan Dillon and like the maybe Five Timers Club. We should get like a little jacket for them or
Yeah,
something.
well,
Adam
yeah,
Bradford.
we had Adam Bradford on today on the live chat, and this is the second time for the live chat Revivified.
Yeah.
And we had him on two or three times before during the first run as well, I believe. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and he's always good to talk to. And not only that, too. Like I gauge, not judge. Judge is kind of judgy, right?
Yeah,
No,
sure.
I gauge the guest on how much I have to talk,
Mm-hmm.
and whether or not I considered, knowing Adam was going to be on, I considered throwing just a screenshot of myself up there and going out for lunch and coming back to see how things were going.
Oh, he would probably handle it adroitly, I'm sure.
I don't think you would notice.
Hey, and I can sort of splice that into the topic that we chose for tonight, which was D&D ideas. As always, this is be a better player, and I would say that is a great kind of player, much like being a host of a live chat show when you can just walk away and they tell their own story for the most part.
Well,
Is
players,
sure.
like so. Certain people we have on, they're definitely talkers, which is
Hmm.
cool, and I like that. It's way
Yeah.
better than fishing for things to talk about. But that might not be the best thing in your game if you have one person that's like that, and then the rest of the players don't get to play because the one person is just constantly at the center. So that that
Hmm.
is one of the tips is like, read the room, be aware of what's going on. If you are like, this is a problem I have as a player. A lot of times is I can be a little overbearing. I know it, and and overpowering. So I know that I have to like step back at the table and make sure like I'm not hogging the spotlight, or think of ways to like bring in other players into it.
Right, and you just like that's a really important distinction. What you just said there too is, we've talked about this, touched on this sort of in other live chats too. It's like even if you have your thing that your character, it's like that's their thing. They're overbearing or brash or whatever, but you don't do it constantly, right? It's
Right.
like okay, like during games, I did my thing. I got to play my character and role play that part that I think is fun, but you don't do it constantly, right?
Well, so they're saying I'm a little quiet compared to you. I will.
Really?
I will. That's a shocker. I will up my
Yeah,
mic a
really,
little
that
bit.
is a shocker. I turned my headphone volume down because it's like, your darkest Dave. It's too
Yeah,
close.
welcome back, Andrew, in the chat. Let's see if that's a little bit better. But not any trait that you pick for a character, because I was talking about me as a player being overbearing. Um,
Well, you play to that strength. A lot of your characters are like that too. Jogo and Unga and stuff.
yeah, but yeah, and it's kind of, it's kind of like knowing whatever that trait is to not overdo it and make
Hmm.
sure you give the other people at the table a chance to get in there and play as well. Or even better, if maybe you can engage players that are quieter and a little more reserved, and get them into the game and role playing. At the same time, too, you also have to gauge, where they're at, and not make them uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You don't want to pull them to the spotlight so much so that they're really just looking for like the table to crawl under or something.
Hmm. Yeah, I actually wrote a disclaimer for myself for this topic too because spoiler. I actually took notes, which I usually don't. That's the spoiler part. But yeah, I said a lot of these ideas that I wrote down at least like assumes you're interested in like exploring different ways to play, right? Like, I didn't want people to think like, well, this is, like if you don't do this stuff, you're just not a good player. It's like, hey, if you want to like kick in the door and talk in third person or whatever, you know.
Well,
More
that's
power to
true.
you.
That's true to a degree, but then there are certain players that do need like maybe a little nudge because they're not
Sure.
aware, right? And when you play a co-op game like an RPG, self-awareness is
Mhm.
super important. I mean, I think that's one of the best skills you can have in order to know how to share the table with
Mhm.
everybody.
And I found that, even if you want to imagine like your character's like the most badass, whatever, insert whatever, it is more fun and memorable when you like do those badass things you imagine with the other players, right? So, like you were saying, like, you know, if you fancy yourself like a really, you know, hard hitting attacker or whatever. It's like, well, like work with other people to like set that up or like, play into that fact. Like, you don't just have to, go off on your own and stuff. And, just being interested in the other characters. I mean, and a lot of that, I guess, is just putting yourself in the character's shoes. It's like, yeah, I mean, as a player, it's fun to imagine that fantasy of having all these cool powers, but it's like, well, you're also the person in the dungeon or wherever, like battling for their life with these people, whether you get along with them out of shared goals or you're really close to them or whatever. It's like they must have some interest in the other people if they're
Yeah. Well, no,
adventuring with them.
that's a good point too. Is like thinking of how you can interact with the other players. Maybe you guys want to make up some cool team move that you all do
Yeah.
together. And hopefully you have a DM that will facilitate that and be like, oh, that's a cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
How can we use that idea and make it beneficial in mechanics in
Right.
the game and as well as in the story itself and the narrative.
Yeah, and that's why, like, when I look at subclasses and stuff, a lot, I look at like, well, what are the things that like does something with somebody else, in the party that interests
I
me.
know that's why you like that really terrible subclass,
Which one?
the fighter one.
The champion?
No, the
Oh, the
champion is
purple
good.
dragon knight. Oh
Yeah, the
my god,
champion is
yeah,
good.
that
I like
thing's
the champion.
awesome.
It's
The
terrible.
banneret.
So terrible.
Not really. I mean, imagine that if we were, if Vent was a banneret, right? It's like,
Uh-huh.
Unga is pretty hard hitting. If I was just making him and Shelton, better at that because I was like rallying them with my, leadership, it makes total sense. That'd be awesome.
There's classes that do it, subclasses that do it better,
Yeah,
cooler.
I don't know. I just think it's cool.
I know you do. I think thematically, I think it's cool. Like I like the concept. I don't like the execution. As you know, that's kind of my thing with that one.
Hmm. I guess we just don't play, or I don't play a lot of, you know, combat challenging games. I'll say
Truth,
too
well,
often.
truth be told, neither do we.
Hmm.
As much as we talk about it, like we're good for like a combat a session.
Well, that's what Nerdarchy's all about. It's like we like talking about all that stuff because it's fun. I mean, you do that stuff anyway. I'm sure everybody in the chat talks with their friends about that. Like, well, what is the highest armor class you can get, or like how much can you lift,
How
or
would you
how
make?
fast can you run? Yeah,
How would you make Captain
that's the
America?
stuff upon which Nerdarchy is built.
It is. It is.
Look at that. Sheldon is the awesomest character. Heck yeah.
He
Just keep
is,
the
and unfortunately, he's very tasty. It's a very
yeah.
bad detriment to him.
Keep the clarified butter away from him.
Absolutely.
One thing. I mean, I guess. Yeah, I guess this falls into being a better player was one thing I wrote down was to put yourself in the character's shoes, especially like not necessarily in terms of like their feelings and all that, but that is
Yeah.
cool too. But in terms of like their powers and stuff. I mean, like what does that mean to like control fire or like swing a axe that weighs 20 pounds like an ancient red dragon and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, like so. That's actually how I play the game. Is like
yeah,
I don't put a lot of thought into my characters before I start playing them, and then I start playing them, and they kind of start to evolve on their own.
hmm
And so one of the things I will say is like you do have to be wary of what your character will and won't do because it becomes a trap. Like over the years we've had so many players well, my character wouldn't do that,
Oh,
and they become like a detriment and obstacle to the rest of the party, where they want to skulk off on their own, and now we're playing two games instead of one.
well, and those are like problem tunities, right? Though
Yeah.
in a way, because it's like, okay, well, like under what I mean, here's a tip to be a better player. Under what circumstances would they do that, right? I mean, it's one thing to. I mean, that's what's fun about the role playing part. Like, say you start off with like a paladin who's like, I'm going to uphold justice and yada yada yada. But or like we played in our those bastards games. Like sometimes you just get in those hard decisions where it's like, look, there's a bunch of innocent people that are in really grave danger, right? And they need our help. But if we leave them to go help more people, they might die. We might die, very likely, or have even more people responsible for stuff.
A good player, right? A good player, in my opinion, has those things that their character doesn't want to do, but the player figures out why the character is going to do those in the game, right?
Like, yeah, that's a great point.
Like we had years ago, TED Talks brings this character up all the time. We had Giles the librarian. We know it's very original, but like his whole thing was, and that was when we rolled the stats and you played them where they lied. So he was actually like kind of beefy for a wizard and a librarian, but he was a farm boy that was really smart, so he got apprenticed, and then and he fell in love with that concept and that idea of books and knowledge and being a wizard, except for he never wanted to leave the tower. He didn't want to leave the library. That was his comfort place, and his master was like, well, you need to get a little more world experience, so you're going to go out and adventure, and I'm not teaching you anything else until you do. You're going to go into the world. So the character always complained about adventuring and doing adventurer things, but always did it. Right? Yeah. It became a fun, cool thing about that character. He role played all the things he didn't want to do as he was doing them. You know, and that's how that's the way you play that character. But the player that like digs in their heels and is like does everything but adventures is like, that's not fun. Why are you even playing this game?
Right. Yeah, right. I mean, and there's a reason that's a great story that comes up time and again because it's very iconic in that way, And it reminds me of like all those like fantasy movies and stories too, where it's like, that's totally classic story of somebody
the
that
reluctant
doesn't
hero.
Want to be an adventurer.
The reluctant hero is a trope for a reason. So double underscore has a question for you, Doug.
Okay.
After your experience applying stats for the Office characters, would you do that for the characters from Community? That's another smart, funny show.
Sure, I love that show. In fact, I played a character named Ruan Swansong, who was a ranger and expert carpenter with Power Score RPG in a Ghost of Saltmarsh game. It was awesome. His carpentry skills actually like helped them because he like examined the choices of ships they had to go on for like their woodworking skill. It was awesome. So yeah, I'll totally do that. That was a fun as hell article to write too. I'm gonna write it down.
Well, that came up today in the chat. I don't know if you were in there when we
Yes, I did. Yeah, I watched it while I was eating dinner.
Yeah, where Adam was like, I could see Cortex being used to make like an Office game.
Absolutely. That's I'm excited about that.
I don't know that I'm down for that RPG in particular, but it's somebody out there who wants to play it, and they should.
Hey man, as wacky as stuff that happens in D&D happens in there. I mean, there's no like bloodshed and monster fighting, but there's like all kinds of bizarre things and funny things.
How are you gonna sabotage Josh's sales this month so you can come out ahead?
Or Councilman Jams trying to jam you in city council meeting.
Yeah.
You can prank him and stuff.
But I actually haven't really watched much of those shows. I've been watching The Office a little bit.
Oh, don't even get me started. Me and Terry are huge dunderheads.
Yeah. My son was on that Office kick for a while. So.
Funny as hell show. There was another question in there too. Oh yeah, have you thought of doing a WWE style adventure?
I think that could be fun. We've done it with like oh man, what was it called? Like there's a Wrestle Federation in the Marvel Universe. For
oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like the Thing was in it.
Yeah. D-Man was in it. Demolition Man was in it. And we used to like when we were kids and we would play Marvel Phase Rip. We totally did that.
Yeah, I was gonna say doing this RPG stuff like full time for a living, I probably thought about doing every kind of thing throughout the day, just like what kind of video should we make, or I need to write a post about something. So yeah, but yeah, we talked about early on when we were chatting about Cortex Prime of doing like Galactic Wrestling. That would be great.
The Galactic Wrestling Federation.
I think something like that would be. I think it would be fun for like a stream game because a lot of wrestling is like the promos and stuff. I don't know if I would want to play that because I'm just not that performative.
Well, yeah, we were actually talking about a game that is like.
But I think it'd be fun.
Ted has reinvented a game from back in I think the 90s or early 2000s. He pitched us an idea for a game, and I'm like, oh, you mean this? The underscore. How do you prep or get pumped to run games, watching the celebrity games, and enjoying them? So
I don't like watching games. I mean, me and Ted, you don't as much, but Ted and I do because we're both critters. Like I watch Critical Role, and that's about it. Like I don't enjoy watching. Nothing against any other streamers. It's just like I'm not into that. And Critical Role satisfies my need to watch people.
The best stream game I ever watched was the SR2 Joker zeroth level game. It was just so dark and bizarre.
Yeah, and that's not to say like as a matter of fact, I won't watch anything else. I liked watching Watcher play Dragon Heist and stuff. Those short things. Amy Vorpal did that like D&D and. Like,
I think what they're saying though is the
people.
micro celebrity games I ran.
Mm-hmm.
He's asking. He's asking about that and how.
Prep. Those celebrity games.
Yeah. How do you?
I'm sorry.
And get pumped to run games.
So
it depends on the game, really. I like most of my work for the session happens during the last session, right? Like taking notes about what happened and where things are going. And then anymore, I just always just leave off on a cliffhanger. And I don't actually know where it's going. I don't know where it's going to be. I just end it there, and then
come back. They'll come back.
yeah. But yeah, it's like that's like, and then it gives me some time to think about, well, what does this mean? What is this going to be, right? And I'm fortunate enough that I play with a lot of players that make it easy, right? They do a lot of stuff. They're fairly active during the game. So, all I have to do is refer back to my notes, what they did last session most of the time, and the hooks are already in there.
I gotta say, I don't know if this makes me a good player or a terrible player or whatever, but one of the things, and it's probably the part I enjoy the most about any role-playing game, is just like really trying to imagine like what would it be like to be this person in this situation. So I feel like maybe I talk too much, about, because I just get excited thinking whether it's those bastards, the Maximum Apocalypse game or your upcoming game or any game, like that just fascinates me as just like a kid who liked playing make believe when I was young, right? I mean, that's what's cool about these games for me. So just imagining like what would it be like to be in this situation?
Yeah, I never think about that. I think about
really.
What does this character want? What are they going to do?
Really?
And then that gets kind of balanced against me, Dave, the instigator, who wants to sees a burning can and wants to kick it over.
That surprised me because you really do enjoy like reading and storytelling and stuff too. Like I'm surprised. So you probably enjoy being a DM more for just sort of creating these opportunities for the players to do stuff and then creating the story with them.
That's all I do. I generally throw out way more plot hooks than they could ever possibly do.
Do you enjoy DMing more than being a player?
I think
or actually, you say it all the time. It's like when you're playing, you want to DM.
Yeah, I enjoy them both equally.
What do you enjoy about playing? I'm just curious.
What do I enjoy? Let's
like
see.
Like with particular. But while you're thinking of that, TJ coming through with Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation was the thing, and the Power Broker was
the one
promoter,
that gave them,
I guess.
No, they're the ones that gave out powers so they could be
that's right.
wrestlers.
Yes.
Yeah. So I I like all the different aspects of the game, right? Like I enjoy the role playing and building a characterization and digging in at characters' ties to the worlds.
Hmm.
But then I also enjoy the gamey aspects of it as well. Like I enjoy, like I've said this many times. Like I hate streams that don't level up, where the
Yeah.
characters don't change. I'm like, that's so to me that's super lame. I'm like that that's like that's the reward to me. That's the carrot, right? At the
Yeah.
end of the session is, do we get to level up this session? Did we get enough XP? I like doing that. I like progressing mechanically as well as narratively.
Yeah, I was about to say, you know, I was thinking of Phase Rip because I was like, well, we didn't really advance in that game because we just, but you do because we bought a lot of power stunts and things like that.
Yeah.
That's sort of that's character development as well. It's like we could do those things more regularly, and those kind of games are neat because you control, they're very customizable in that way.
Yeah. Well, too, like, when you say, well, what do you like to do and how do you create characters? Like, I always start small and just, like, build on it, right? Like, Uthengar's kind of backstory was, his clan was responsible for gathering magic and making the hold stronger that way.
Mm-hmm.
So they would send their warriors, their wizards out to go and find more magic and bring it back to the hold, right? So that was like something that started. He was getting more powerful, and then he encountered another dwarf from a different clan, a different hold, that actually would create magical tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
So he instantly set about trying to woo that other dwarf because he saw it as an acquisition for his hold, for his clan. And I also feel like marriage is very contractual and not structured. I don't know what the word I'm looking for dwarves than other races. Like I feel like dwarves more often than not do not marry for love. That they would definitely have like arranged marriages.
Okay.
It almost like business transactions between different
Sure.
clans.
So you like that? Yeah, you like that bit of world adding it. Well, I kind of enjoy that same thing too, with like making characters and that sort of is what I mean about like putting their place in the world is like it gives you a point of view, for
Yeah.
making those decisions. Like, well, what would somebody that this is the world they live in think about this, or what would they do here? Or because of those things you said, whether it was like their motivation to gather magic or strengthen their clan, it's like it gives you a filter to so those are cool kind of characters because it doesn't matter what kind of adventure you're on if it's it doesn't have to be like related to that thing that you thought of. It just informs those decisions like, well, maybe he wouldn't do this because it's like, man, this doesn't have anything that
Yeah. So
doesn't affect me at all. So those are the times when you can give the spotlight to the other players because you're like, I'm really indifferent. Like you don't have to make a big show why you don't care. Just let the other players do that.
there's definitely been sessions that were kind of like that where they were doing something that this character wouldn't care about, wouldn't want to do.
Yeah.
Or even little things like I think like the whole party had clones or sacrilégums. No, they had all clones made, and the one player was like, "Oh, I could do a clone for you as well," and like I was like, "No, I don't think Uthengar would want a clone."
Yeah.
Like he found his dwarf wife. He's going to try and pass down the line that way. He doesn't want to live on that. As the clone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this kind of relates to the question from Double Underscore. They said, does our fan input during those bastards break your immersion? I love the live chat, but don't want to upset you guys. And like during those times, I was going to say, no, it doesn't, because that's actually helpful, especially like when, two other characters are talking. It's like, well, I'm not there anyway, so I'll just see what the chat's up to. It's something to do.
And also, too, I feel like if it's any player that found that problematic, it's easy enough for them to kind of just ignore the chat while they're playing.
Mm-hmm. I don't think like Ted looks at it or. too often.
No, he does, because he'll start laughing, and it's because of something in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I think this particular group does like to interact with the chat. And like now, when I'm GMing, I won't interact with the chat, but I do have it up. So sometimes the chat will say something, and then I'll weave that into the game, just because I thought it was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I like doing that. So and also too, like that's another thing is like what does being a player mean in this day and age where people are streaming their games and people are taking them in as well. I know sometimes it can be tough because it's almost like people are like competing for the spotlight because it's kind of like a show. So, but it's like in those instances, I feel like it's even more important that you kind of like bring it back and interact with the rest of the group, and are sharing it. During the Saber Dice games, there were certain players that just were like phenomenal at doing that, interacting with the rest of the cast. Like I felt Mike from Unmade Gaming was really good at that, as well as Guy Schlanders from How to Be a Great GM is also a great player. Go figure.
Yeah. And those are things. I mean, sometimes being a better player is just thinking about that stuff, like while you're playing. I do that. I mean, I don't want to be a hog and stuff. It's fine. It's like, if you're into some part of the game, of course you want to like talk and interact a lot, but sometimes like, okay, I'm talking too much, or like cutting people off. I try to not do that as much. Like if somebody starts talking, I'd be like, oh no, just say excuse me or whatever, and just let it. Especially online, one huge thing about being a better player, I think, especially for me, or these more and more people play online with new people all the time, is like just keep in mind, like you don't know anything about these people very often, like when we do our monthly one shots, or whether you're in Discord and pick up a game. So just I think keeping that in mind, it's like you don't know who they are, what their lives are like, what their backgrounds are like. So just being respectful of people in general, I think, is good advice no matter what thing you're doing in life, right?
Yeah, it's a good rule to live by.
Yeah.
So are you much of a wrestling fan? Do you watch wrestling?
I don't now, but I used to be the hugest wrestling fan. I mean, I was like, I would tell like friends and even jobs, like if I filled out what do you call it, availability, it was like Monday night, nope, can't work because I got to watch Monday Night Raw. I mean, I was huge, growing up until like the end of the Attitude Era.
So me watching wrestling was pre-Raw. Right, pre-Monday night.
Oh yeah,
it was definitely like maybe my tweens is like.
Oh, so you were watching when it was like the National Wrestling Alliance and stuff like that.
That was the WWF. It was WWF.
There was that, but then the like Ric Flair was in the.
In the other one, yeah. And like so when I was watching, it was like Ultimate Warrior. What was his name? George the Animal Steel.
Yeah.
Hacksaw Duggan, the Hart Brothers.
Jake the big boss man.
No, I don't remember.
The cop. He was like a cop.
Oh yeah.
He was like just a Southern guy. He's gonna be Law and Order.
That vaguely rings a bell, but yeah.
Oh yeah, dude, I was huge wrestling fan.
And then
I still watch like documentaries and shoot interviews and stuff, even like as recent as yesterday.
Oh yeah, Dusty Rhodes. And then I stopped watching, but my brother and my middle brother and my dad would still watch, so then I would make fun of them for watching it. But I've matured since then, so like I don't make fun of people for liking what they like, no matter how I feel about the thing.
Sure.
If they're not hurting anybody and they're enjoying what they enjoy, go for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, and if you're into wrestling, it kind of goes back to like even the Unlimited Wrestling or WWE thing or Cortex Galactic Wrestling, whatever you want. It has a lot to fun, have fun role playing with, like matches and promos, backstage stuff, and even if you play it like whether it's really people wrestling to pin each other, or actually the way it is where it's like, hey man, so and so says he doesn't want to lose the belt tonight, so you got a jab to the champ, like what, like at the last second, and it's like, are you gonna shoot in the live during the pay-per-view and stuff? I think that would be fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of room there to have fun and play with that, and I would absolutely get it. Like, and it's like it's perfect to just like go for going all ham,
Yeah.
Whether you're playing the heel or what do they call the good guys?
The baby face.
The baby face.
That's the way I think of Vent, to be honest. Like, he's just, you know, he doesn't want to, like, cheap shot people and stuff like that. I think you guys were more horrified that I wanted to, like, get those Earth Elementals on the right track and didn't murder them in the alley.
That was funny. Oh, you know, before _ go, he needs to know, what are you drinking tonight, Doug?
Bogota Blackberry Lime carbonated beverage of unknown brand.
Yeah, nice. Yeah,
but it is low calorie. I'll give you a hint.
So it's funny. Like, there was a mix. Like, I feel like Ted and Steven were wanted to off them. But see, actually, Unga was indifferent. He didn't actually care.
Mm-hmm.
But he also thought he thought it was silly that you're trying to rehabilitate them. And and he knows that like he feels that he knows that they've made a decision and that's their life choice and they're living the best life they can and the way they want to live it.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, I guess that's one of those cases of, and maybe it's like a misalignment on my part of like putting yourself in the character's shoes, right? It's like, we're in a city, I imagine Lester's like a nice place, right? It's not like it's a filthy alley in a city where like the buildings are made of beautiful glass, right? It's nice, they're just, I mean, it's not like there was a dumpster there. It's just like a park between two buildings where nobody could see. So it's like, it's not some dirty underbelly of Lester. It's just like,
I think it is.
I say, well, I guess, like I said, my imagination, I just don't see it.
We all imagine it different.
But it's like, well, I don't have any authority here to, it's like they're beating us up and they want to kill people. So and then honestly, though, part of me is like, if we do, wouldn't they just go back to the elemental plane of Earth? I mean, they're elementals. Like I mean, and that's just like the mechanical,
Maybe if that's how it works,
right? World, exactly. That's right? Just like that. Yeah.
But no, like so when we were playing and I was like, hey, I want to go find the ghetto part of town and hang out in the alleys to reminisce about and kind of reflect on my old life. And so
I didn't know that's why Unga went to. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So maybe there's a place where all like the desert dust collects, and that's lost.
Ooh, I like that.
Who knows?
Desert dust, yeah. Because they're Earth Elemental.
But I think it's funny though that the Earth Elemental toughs were introduced kind of early, like 3 or 4 sessions ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
And then finally, like some fruition came from it. They developed further into it, and now, and they're still there now. They're still in the game, and me as the player,
they have color-coded jerkins.
They do, they've come a long way since the beginning. They've developed, and I think it's great that Vint has is trying to reform them. I mean, but like Unga is like, they're going to totally bolt as soon as they get a chance. They are so out of here.
I'll tell you what, I like playing a low wisdom, generally good character because it's like you're just naive and like he believes like, no, if I show these guys that like, hey, you should have some pride and try to be a better person, that like they'll come around. And it's like if they flee, hey, at least Vent will know like I tried to, he tried to do the right thing. But
I like the fact that out of the last like dozen or so comments, like half or more of them are about wrestling now.
It's a great genre. Like I said, whether you're playing it where, these people are really contending physically, without predetermined endings, or the dramatic side of like contract negotiation. I mean, my friends in my old group, like they would love that shit. Right? Like, oh yeah, I want to go like negotiate with the promoter or even in low levels. I mean, hey, you got to do, it's like, how much do you really want to be a wrestler? I mean, you're going to, put your body on the line for like $10, and like drive 300 miles and stuff in a rental.
Dude, I worked at a lumber company. I drove for a lumber company in my mid-20s.
This is awesome. How would you make Wrestlers in DD? I want to make a grung macho man Randy Savage. That sounds awesome just because he's got the flying elbow. He could jump 25 feet.
Yeah, lay it on him. Well,
try one of those ones that you just did the video today. Wasn't there one of the things that was sort of...
Oh, the living weapon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just basically like open hand plus more damage than the open hand.
Yeah, it was
But
kind of
in a
with some
nutshell.
like cool flair to it, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, with flair, but I mean, it was, just like
Yeah,
that. But check that out.
for sure. But I one of the guys I worked with was like an amateur wrestler.
Uh-huh. Oh, really?
Yeah, like you know, like I don't know. I guess they probably have them in Ohio too, where it's just
Oh, yeah,
like,
they're everywhere.
yeah,
You know what's something that isn't everywhere anymore, though, that was on the rise for a while? It was fascinating. Was real life superheroes. That was a movement for a while. We had one in Ohio. There was
uh,
a lot of them around the country. I'm
and a
sure New
couple of them
Jersey had
got
one.
shot in the face, and that was that. Turns out there's a reason why people don't go fighting crime
Yeah.
because they don't have superpowers and guns are a thing.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
want to, I know it's not. I'm trying to relate it in my head, but it's not. But man, your upcoming game has got me really excited. Hey, I'll say this. One tip for being maybe a more immersed player is make a Pinterest board for your character. Because damn, there's some cool art on there, and the way like if you find something you like, it'll just be like, oh, you like that? Well, then here's more of that sort of thing, and here's some other ideas that are related to that. I mean, that is hugely helpful for me when I'm making characters. I like to do that a lot, and as a DM. Oh yeah, which that reminds me though. One of my tips: you want to be a bad player? Run a game once in a while. Why don't you? If you're like in the player, and you're like your friend or whatever always DMs, or you always join groups and
give back.
as a player, yeah, I even get back. Just try it. It's.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, you're gonna be like, this is really nerve wracking. It always is.
Yeah.
I've DM'd like hundreds, maybe thousands of times in my life, and I still, even playing like at home with people that I've played with before that isn't streamed or anything, you're just like, oh man, like what if it just stinks or they don't have fun or whatever.
So we've got
Not the whole time, but
2 more sessions coming up for our Those Bastards game.
yep.
And then, then we're going to take a week off. Then we're going to come back with a new game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was very much considering running that game in Cortex.
Yeah,
I need to spend a little bit more time with the rules. But
I agree.
more specifically with that game, because there's so many ways to modify it.
Mm-hmm.
And like when you play Cortex, you build the game as you play. That is the biggest thing why I decided not to use that. So we're going to be using Cypher System to run a Thundar the Barbarian meets Flash Gordon kind of game.
Yeah, this sounds super. I'm super excited about that. And yeah, I totally know what you mean.
And I make fun of 2020 a little bit in there.
Mm-hmm.
I felt it was very necessary, and I completely rip off the opening from Thundar the Barbarian.
Oh, really?
Yeah, pretty much, right? I'm doing a comet.
Yeah.
That was a comet passes by, does something to the moon, screws everything up.
Well,
Absolutely.
Here's something that I hope made me a better player for your game when developing, when coming up with my character was like, well, think of things like sometimes you don't know it until you're seeing it though, but like, when you're trying to think of like character concept or a backstory, it's fun to think of like vague sorts of things that maybe your character doesn't know for sure. And you don't feel like if I don't do this thing, the whole experience is ruined for me. Like, you're searching for, your brother's killer or whatever, stuff like that, right? Like just things for the DM. So then, it's sort of like we were talking about earlier. It's like something that can motivate your decisions, but not like control them, right?
Yeah, I mean, in the Those Bastards game, Unga has a bit of that in there, where there are things that if it gets resolved, never gets resolved, I don't really care. Mm-hmm. But like I just threw some like kind of really dark aspects of that character out there, and then I was like, and I was to the GM, I'm like, do whatever you want with them. Don't use them. I don't.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. If you whatever you want to do, whatever makes it easier or better for you. Absolutely. Sure. But by no means are you beholden to do those things. I just threw it out there to be interesting.
Mm-hmm. And those sorts of things can also aid you as a player for like those times when maybe somebody does throw the ball to you and you're like, I don't know what, like maybe you weren't even paying attention that closely, or you're not sure what your character would do or how you feel about something, and you can kind of rely on those, or like if there's just a lull, it's like, well, like Uga's usually concerned about like animals in peril. I would say, I don't know like specifics of it, but that's a concern of his, right? So
Yeah, he
that's
cares about
something you could,
animals, not people so much.
yeah. And those are things you can always rely on. It's like those are things that he would notice, in a scene or a crowd or a room, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, the funny thing about Unga,
and want to do something about it.
For me is like he considers like the bastards above people, but still kind of beneath animals.
Sure, I get that.
Where where he rates them,
Mm-hmm.
but it's close. It's close. Like you know, you really rainbows really become important to him, and obviously Sheldon
Mm-hmm.
is his boon companion. So like that kind of stuff is that stuff is kind of fun. Without doing too much with it. Although, if we do awaken Sheldon, totally going to be like he's totally going to be a mashup of Chopper from the Rebels and Rodney Dangerfield.
Yeah, that's quite a game. Yeah, I'm just super excited about the upcoming game too. Not to take anything away from our current game, but it's a fun group. And I really like my sort of, astronaut character idea.
So Joe says he plays Envoy with an amateur wrestler from Florida. So I'm wondering what Envoy is, if it's a video game or if it's a tabletop RPG.
Yeah.
I don't know either, but now I'm kind of curious. Hey, Sleepy Gone. Well, Doug's not a guest. He's part of Nerdarchy. He's Nerditor Doug, which means if you've ever checked out our website, he's the one that keeps the content flowing over there and keeps things from burning to the ground for the most part. He does so much more than that, but that's his primary job.
And all the products that we make are made by me.
Yeah, he makes the things for sure. Yeah. He's our resident wordsmith.
Envoy is a word. Oh, but anyways, they had a question. Huh?
Yeah.
Oh yes, if I was a guest, I wouldn't have a built-in name in my
It'd be typed, yeah.
It'd be white in a different font. Let's get with it, Sleepy Gaunt.
Yeah. So rules for Tiny Eldritch Cannon Force Ballista. Could you create one that allowed it to climb on your shoulder to act as a shoulder cannon? I see. First of all, I'm pretty sure it's a tiny thing anyway, and it has a movement. So I would definitely allow it, but there might be some instances where someone's got to make a check to see if it can stay there. I don't think it's really that big because you could also have it as a handheld thing. Now it depends too. Like, what are you trying to do? Is it you? Is it a player? And are they just trying to game the system to free up their hands somehow to do something? But they still want the gun version. Which I don't think there's that many ways you can game the system because technically you could have it just on the ground in front of you as a turret. So,
I guess it. Is that a artificer thing?
Yeah. It's the artificer artillerist. They make those little cannons that could actually be a gun, like a magic gun that you hold.
Does it cost some resource on your part to have it move?
No. So I mean, it's probably if it's like, especially if it's just a flavor thing, then it would absolutely be like, okay, fine. That would not be an issue.
I mean, if it was tiny, it could be in your space anyway, so it's not like.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to do the Predator thing, why not?
Yeah,
it doesn't mechanically.
That was exactly what I thought too. Yeah,
but if you try and get the 3 dots, you've gone too far.
I am a interpretive DM to the extent that if a warlock wanted to pretend they had a tiny Eldritch Cannon Force Ballista on their shoulder when they Eldritch Blast, I'd be like, oh, I don't care. It just does the same thing as Eldritch Blast, so whatever.
Yeah, if it doesn't mechanically change anything, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And that's literally a class feature where you could have it on the ground and have both your hands free anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Could you put it on a ballista, shoot it somewhere, and then
maybe it has a move speed, I believe. I haven't looked at that since the Artificer came out, so So that's a
Which they are reprinting in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. I mean, we might as well chat about that for a little bit.
yeah. Well, I knew they had to reprint it somewheres,
Mm-hmm.
only because they made a new sub, they made the Iron Man subclass for it,
Yeah,
right?
the armor, which is also in there.
Which, like, if they're gonna put that somewheres, the rule of thumb is they won't use something that requires you to have another book, so they would have to put it in the book.
Mm-hmm.
It also might mean they're done with the Artificer.
What do you mean?
Well, unless they keep reprinting that class.
Oh, well, which they could.
Yeah, I mean they could. It'd be weird, but
Yeah.
well, because the philosophy is you shouldn't need anything more
Right.
than the player's handbook,
Mhm.
and
But
that's the
although-
only one that's
yeah.
not in there.
Although the way they sort of, have marketed these things, including Xanathars, is that, well, your PHB, that's 5th edition D&D, and everything else is just optional. So it's like, well, if you want to use the options in that book and that book, I know, but that being said, they have said, like, well, we don't want people to have 2 books, but you don't have to have them, I guess.
Yeah, no, you don't. So yeah, so it's a weird
Mm-hmm.
it's a weird design conundrum because because they've already stated like this principle of, hey,
Sure.
we don't want to do this thing.
Yeah.
But then that means you're kind of done you would be kind of done for the Artificer.
Yeah, I was just, I said it in the headline of our post. It's like, it really did just have everything. I mean, it's got like a lot of subclasses and feats and spells and, magic items and alternative class features and spell versatility and Beastmaster option, alternatives and puzzles that you can drop into your game, magical environments. I think it's going to be pretty neat.
Well,
and I'm curious because it's like, well, that Tasha is a character that hasn't been explored or sort of, used as much as like Mordenkainen and those kind of characters. So it's like, yeah, it's fun to, have that iconic character get sort of like a voice in the comments.
I am kind of excited for the Beastmaster.
Yeah.
Like, the way they handled it is way better. Because, like, every pet they've come up with since the Beastmaster has been so much better.
Yeah, right. I know.
And listen, my only real complaint for the Beastmaster is the Beast just needs a little more hit points to make them viable, so they don't get one-shotted. All the DMs I've played with are nice and they don't attack the Beast, but I tell you,
Does Sheldon ever get attacked?
Very rarely.
I mean, yeah, not directly. He just gets caught in blasts and things.
He's been caught in blasts and things. He may have been attacked directly. I mean,
well, how many hit points does Sheldon have?
He's only got 20, man.
Oh, so it wouldn't even be that hard for him to be killed just by massive damage, right? Because, like, do they get death saves and stuff? I mean, I would assume they do, right?
I would assume they do, only because they're kind of like important NPCs. And
right.
the thing is, too, like, once Beast Companion dies, it's just dead. You can get a new one.
Does it? Yeah, I don't remember. Does the rules like specify getting a new one?
Yeah, it says in it they do specify.
It's just like at the end of a long rest, you can get another one, basically.
Yeah, and it's super weird too. Like, especially if you're in a game that you have an unforgiving GM.
Yeah,
like,
there's no giant crabs around here. Sorry.
You'd be well, no, not even just that. It'd be like, every couple sessions you'd be going through a companion because it's just not hard.
Is there enough to support a hypnotist character to high levels? I mean, if I was going to make any kind of hypnotist, I would take a 2-level dip into wizard enchanter for that hypnotic gaze. That is awesome.
Or just play an enchanter. I mean, I would think that.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
this character is probably going to be an enchanter.
Sure, I was just saying. I'm sure there's all sorts of beguiling abilities out there of characters, but yeah, I mean, being a guy who's focuses their magical research on hypnotizing people.
I think I found our next character build.
Yeah? What is it? I'll write it down.
Yeah, write it down, hypnotist.
Because
I'm thinking, right, you need your 2 levels. You need your 2 levels of enchanter. But then I was also the Fey Warlock pack, I believe.
Yeah,
also
yeah.
Gives you that early level charm. There's maybe the Glamour Bard?
Mm-hmm. What's fun about that and many of our CBGs is that already, you can see, like, because a lot of people will say, like, oh, those aren't good because they go all the way to 20 and they don't get good until later. A lot of these, like, by like third level, fourth level, it's like you already have like all the abilities,
Yeah,
that you
some
would
of
want.
them.
Like say you were like a third level bard, second level wizard. What was the other thing you said? Warlock, like a second or third level, or even a first level
Yeah,
warlock,
first
right?
level.
It's
Yeah,
like,
you get the
but
ability
wait,
at
your
first
fourth
level.
level, you can like, hypnotic gaze, glamour stuff. You get the Fey Eye or whatever it's called. It's like you're hypnotizing people left and right. Like if you want to be like that, it's not that hard. But yeah, I'm definitely right.
So, but I guess the actual question is there enough high level support for spells?
Well,
And
yeah,
yeah, I feel like there is because
but those abilities scale up that you don't need to rely. I mean, yeah, there is spells, but there's also those things that are like better than spells in some cases, right?
well,
Like
and
having
also like I don't really think you have to get that high level um before you kind of before you kind of get it, like you kind of max out. Let's see.
so like hypnotic gaze. It never runs out. You just can't do it more than once for long rest on the same creature. You can do it all day long, and it's
Oh
like
yeah, that is pretty
it just
nice.
relies on their wisdom saving throw, and if they fail, they're they're charmed by you, and they just sit there hypnotized. Let's see,
But yeah,
and they don't get another save. And
I
so yeah,
I don't
they
think the
don't.
spells go that that high. I mean, when you bring up enchantment, that gives us 3 pages on D&D Beyond.
Mhm.
But I think by like
Yeah, but spells are just dependent on your DC. I mean,
yeah,
if your DC is like 20 and you're casting suggestion,
then it's
probably,
yeah, I see what you're saying. Then
probably gonna
it
work.
definitely scales. And spells like suggestion, you can
Dominate.
you can also empower them with higher level slots so that they last longer.
Yeah.
8 hours, 24 hours.
Is Gesh a wizard? Yeah, I mean, that's pretty GD powerful, right?
What level is mass suggestion?
I think there isn't one that's just a higher level suggestions.
Nah, there's mass suggestion 6th level.
Yeah.
And then again you can cast that as a so mass suggestion if you cast it as a 9th level slot lasts 1 year and a day. So I would say there is high level support for it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can also influence up to 12 creatures with one casting. So
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot.
yeah. So yeah, I would say. I mean, that's one example. And then you're absolutely the dominate spells as well are going to be there as well. You have things like hypnotic pattern and enthrall.
Yeah. Here's a little little mentions about antipathy and sympathy. Those are very powerful effects at 8th level too.
Yeah, I don't
It lasts for
remember.
like 10 days.
Oh wow, I don't remember exactly what they do.
They basically, like, sympathy makes you like Pied Piper, and antipathy makes you like the opposite of that. Like people are just repulsed by being in an area. It's you target okay. It attracts or repels creatures of choice. Targets not within range, either a huge or smaller object or a creature that an area no larger than 200-foot cube that just like people either just flock to for 10 days or are repulsed by and just want to get away from. That's pretty powerful. Yeah, command. I mean, heck, on Critical Role, they just commanded like a souped up Morkoth that like wasted its turn groveling because it failed its
So
save.
TJ, there should be some kind of mechanic where the Beastmaster shares damage with its pets, like splits it up evenly between them. Did I write an article about that? If
Probably.
I know I've talked about it in videos, and like that was an early idea that I had to fix the Beastmaster, is
Mm-hmm.
that they just had a pool of hit points that they shared. But then like some things came up was like, well, what happens about area of effects, and you're both caught in the area of effect? Do you take the damage twice? Or do you take it once? If you both do, you both have to save. Only one of you have to save.
Hey, you could like, what if you just did that? Like, just made it so it had as many hit points as you. You know, it's just like, well, as long as I'm up, it's up with me.
Mm. Okay,
Would
so
that
at
be an
first,
easy fix to it? I mean,
like it doesn't technically take damage.
well, yeah, it's just like when you run out of hit points, it's dead. I mean, that technically, that in a way, that's making it less powerful because
Yeah.
it did have hit points that it could soak up.
So yeah, I don't know because I mean thematically there is something cool about like your character goes down, and the companion's still there standing over top of your unconscious body protecting you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's true. To TJ's follow up point, Glamour Bright could do the hypnotist thing by themselves. True, but then the video would be really boring and the CBG.
and so would the build.
Yeah. So.
But you know, and also like when we do the builds, when we do the builds, it's like we're not necessarily saying this is the only way or the best way to do it. This is a way. There's a bunch of ways you could do it. You know, or sometimes we're trying to do something really specific, like the go first character, where like how many different scores can we use of our stats for initiative, right?
Yeah, the quick strike.
Yeah, which you know, I think that one got really insane. I don't remember what the final bonus was.
I think they couldn't have an initiative less than 20 or something like that. Maybe even higher than that. Like it was just not even possible.
There's a feat that gives you a +5.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure you can get charisma, wisdom, intelligence, and dex. So maybe it was you couldn't like get.
And then like have advantage on it. And...
I think it was closer to a 30.
Yeah, probably.
Oh yeah, and then Jack of all trades.
Yeah, right.
I'm pretty sure. I think it was like you couldn't get less than a 30.
There was a champion one too because I don't think that made the cut, as I recall, because there were so many abilities that would affect your initiative because they would have advantage on dex checks. Ooh, a UNT. Man, TJ, you're practically doing this first. Hey, you want to phone this into our planning meeting tomorrow, and we'll just call it up. And nope, that couldn't be adventure.
Well, that's kind of cool. I kind of like that idea because you're like a snake charmer, but then you start at Kwood Publishing just.
But you're a snake charmer.
Yeah. Well, Kwood Publishing just chimed in with it as I was saying it, snake charmer. But like, I like the idea. You're a snake charmer. That's a snake charmer that also charms other people.
Yeah, and being a UNT, you can also charm snakes. Legit.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
Whoa. That's like snakeception.
Yeah, how many ways?
Hey, actually, the article today about Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, based on the press briefing I went to, would address Tally Teichmann's comment. They are, and if you look in Volo's guide, they're under the Monstrous Adventures section, which is separate from the standard player adventures. That's why the orcs and kobolds have negative modifiers and so forth. But in the context of D&D Beyond, for instance, where you don't see that part at all, it seems like they're crummier, but they are meant to be over and underpowered.
Yeah, they're all over the place.
The whole section. Bugbears, goblins, I mean, you could argue they're overpowered. They're small, but they have a 30-foot movement and awesome Fury of the Small ability and stuff. So it says that in the section right
there. That's the header there. So, well, I've got 2 Yuan-ti in the game that I'm running. Tally's actually playing one of them. And it hasn't broken the game yet. So we're a couple sessions in and hasn't ruined it yet.
It all depends on the kind of game you play, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't made UNT, but yeah, they have fascinating lore and just Ivaka. I mean, it's cool. It's a snake person, and they sort of have that. It's like you can look as snaky or as not as you sort of imagine. For your game, and maybe Tally would enjoy this. There's an article that Mike Gould just wrote. I think it says like play your next 5e D&D game with more immersive magic items. It was really popular. Has a really cool. He just took like a staff of the Python and sort of added some story elements and extra powers to it. Like if you do certain things, like if you turn into a snake under like the full moon light and stuff, like this happens. It's really cool. You might like it. Maybe it'll show up in your game for Tally's. Is she a druid? Or they? Are they injured?
Tally he
Sorry.
is playing a druid actually.
Really?
Yeah, your favorite druid.
The spores?
Yeah, spores.
Ooh, a UNT spore druid? That's really cool.
Yeah, we have a Yanti spore druid, and we have
wow.
a Yanti Way of the Four Elements monk.
Nice. Nice.
And
That sounds like that sounds like a really fun campaign too.
Then a lizard folk, a dragonborn, and a human.
What are we? The hairless ape.
The hairless ape, yes.
Yeah. Well, hey, I don't think we had any announcements to make or anything. I think we stayed pretty on track talking about being a better player in D&D or any RPG.
And if we did have any announcements to make, Ted didn't tell us, and he keeps track of that.
Yeah, and we even have it in the minutes of our meetings each week, so pretty sure there was nothing there. Nice. But yeah, thanks to everybody that was hanging out here today. Dave will be back tomorrow at noon with a creative person or industry pro or somebody that talked nerdy for about an hour, and then
tomorrow.
You can see...
I think tomorrow's Runesmith.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. That's right, Logan.
Yes.
Runesmith. So yeah, come back and hang out with that, and then you can see us all try to be better players as we play those bastards as we do every Tuesday at 8 p.m. And until next time,
stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.